Hi everybody, Son of the Morning here to bring you yet another ye old Comic-Con Modern review. Today we're going to be looking at Wolverine #1. This book just came out this week. It's a thickie, so there's a lot to go through in here. We'll start it off here. It starts off very interesting because it starts off with Wolverine being very, very damaged. Now, of course, we know Wolverine has healing powers, so we're not going to be particularly worried about him. Of course, when we flip the page here, we can see it appears as though Wolverine has killed a bunch of the X-Men, including Jean, which is obviously not something that he ever wanted to do. We're not sure what happened. We're hoping to find out. So, the major characters that are involved in this issue here are Wolverine, Marvel Girl, Kitty Pryde, Sage, Domino, Kid Omega, Gateway, Beast, and also Omega Red's gonna become a big part of the story here. So, story starts off, it's really just like, oh, Logan's awesome, Logan's playing with kids, Logan's having fun, yay, everybody loves Logan. Then, of course, they tell him that, or Jean tells him that there's something that they need him for, something that he is the right man for the job, so he has to go and join Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde decides to take him for a ride. Now, I found this very interesting here. There's really not much going on here. It's just Kitty Pryde and Logan drinking in a bar, talking about how Logan seems so happy and all of this. He was playing with the children, having a great time. So I'm thinking this is some foreshadowing that things are gonna go not so well for Logan. And we already saw on the first page something very bad happens with Logan. We just don't know when that is. So the issue that they're having, that Kitty talks to Logan about, is that the Krakoan flower petals that are being distributed around the world for medical purposes, some of them are going missing. And then in this scene, this is this special agent guy, Agent Bannister, who is a CIA operative, and they're looking into these suspicious murders here. They think that they're murders, but it actually turns out that these were suicides. The situation being that these people are using the stolen petals of the Krakoan flowers and making some sort of drug out of it, and a drug that they are referring to as pollen. Now, on here, there's a lot of reading here. Basically, what they're saying here is that the CIA is not sure where this drug is coming from. They're not sure if it has something to do with the mutants or not. They're sort of thinking that the mutants are running their own black market trade for the medicine, for the pollen, for the petals of the flowers, for others to do nefarious things with them. So I'll just read the end here. Because of collaborating with drug traffickers will allow for a campaign of espionage, subversion, sabotage, and possibly profit, the Flower Cartel has since proposed a meeting, the location in deep Alaska. So we know something's going on here. And the next thing we have here is Wolverine. He's talking about the intelligence of Krakoa and how Krakoa is a mutant. It does what it does, but he needs to. He recognizes that he's good at stabbing things, but he's gonna need a little bit more help because he's going to have to go to Alaska to figure out what's going on. So they go over here. The gate opens up for them. Now, the one thing that I wanted to point out here after the conversation between Wolverine, Kid Omega, Domino, and Jean is they say, sorry, Jean says, be careful, Logan. Whatever or whoever it is we're dealing with, they're not afraid and they're not pulling this off undetected. That might mean that it's an inside job. And so here we get more. Here we find out that Agent Bannister's daughter is sick, that she could really use the mutant petal drugs to help cure her, and that he's really angry. As she notices he's angry, but he's angry because there's people that are doing bad things with the Krakoan flower petals. More reading. So this is where they're talking about the Order of X. Now this is something that I find very interesting because it's almost like I'd mentioned in a previous video that the mutants are starting to almost look like they might be the bad guys. That was when I was doing the X-Men Fantastic Four #1. They're definitely acting in their own self-interest, and they don't seem to be paying too much attention to the interests of others, and that's why I made that comment. Now, this is where it gets a little more interesting, because they say in here that there's always been people who've been sort of looked up to mutants and sort of worshipped them, but there is now this Order of X. They are showing up outside these Krakoan gates that they can't actually pass through, hoping for mutants to come through, just hoping to get a glance, a touch, a word from one of them. One of the issues that they are dealing with too is that they're going to they're going to start taking the drug, or the Krakoan petal drug, or whatever concoction of it, because it's part of their ceremony. So once the mutants here cross through the gates, they are sort of immediately worshipped here. Then they pull out their petal drugs, they take them, they're really happy for a minute. It's Kid Omega, being young and maybe not so smart, decides that since these people love them so much, he's gonna crowd surf with them, let them touch them, all that sort of stuff. Jean realizes with her telepathic abilities right away that something is definitely not right. And as we can see here, there is something up with the drug that they have taken. It has turned them mad, and now they are after the mutants. They want the mutants' blood. So, love this art here. Love this picture with Domino, Wolverine, and Marvel Girl. Think it's fantastic. They realize they need to defeat these people, but Wolverine doesn't want any of them to be killed unless they have to be. It's a big battle ensues there, and eventually they all start dying. And Wolverine was, of course, very concerned that people don't die, and he's thinking that it was Kid Omega that started killing people. Jean lets him know that it's not him that's killing the people, it's actually the pollen that they consume that killed the people. So the day earlier in Moscow, Logan went to confront one of these Krakoan drug dealers. I don't know what other he's not Krakoan, one of these Krakoan flower drug dealers. And he wants to know what is going on. He wants to know where he's getting the stuff, all of that sort of thing. So he brings the body here. He says to him, Look familiar? Ran a mutant-worshipping cult known as the Order of the X. It is time for the conversation to be over, he says. Now, of course, Wolverine isn't going to be satisfied with that. Roughs him up a little bit, because that's what Wolverine does. Then the guy takes off his glasses, and he shows that one of his eyes has been burned out. He basically explains how the Pale Lady, as we'll refer to her as, made him do it. She controlled him with his mind and made him take the drugs. Or sorry, made him take the lighter to his eye. And so then we flip back to Krakoa, and Wolverine's talking to Beast, and Beast says, we're tracking the feeds, news, police, social media, the dark web. More people are talking about it than actually using it. So he's referring to the drug, and he says there appears to be a new drug war brewing. And Wolverine makes the comment here, and we're to blame. Once again, like I said, I'm starting to think that the mutants, the X-Men, are turning into villains, which I have no problem with. I think that could be really cool, but I don't think Wolverine is going to be one of them or wants to be one of them. I think he kind of sees the situation for what it is a little bit better than everybody else does. So over here, we'll just CIA headquarters. Agent Bannister is saying the muties control everything, so why not the black market too? Only one way to find out for sure if it's them. We pose as buyers, set up a meeting, and go directly to the flower cartel. So once again, they're making they're asserting that they think that the mutants are both trying to heal the world and also try to exploit the black market for their own personal gain. So then now we find Logan in Alaska, and he's just sort of lamenting about all of the bad things that he has done, and he shouldn't have family, he shouldn't have friends, he should be a loner. And then he sees her, the pale girl. So we already know that she has these sort of mind control abilities, and Wolverine says, it was you made me do it. We don't know exactly if that's referring to this stuff. Not sure, don't know yet, doesn't really give us that information. Also don't know exactly when this is taking place. So behind the pale girl, these guys come up on him. They ask him, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing here? Who the hell are you? He just sort of says he's wondering the same thing. And this part of the story, it says, is to be continued. So then we very much flip. This very much has more of the Jonathan Hickman X-Men series feel. But I really liked this part here because it sort of shows that, like I was saying, that Wolverine has a growing distrust of Krakoa especially, and of just the going-ons and machinations of the mutants that have been happening lately. So he's saying how the island's changing. One day there's a mountain here, the next day there's a valley here, gardens grow out of nowhere, stuff like that. Basically saying like it's a very strange place, he doesn't trust anything. You know, he thinks that it's a dangerous place to a certain extent. Now, he also mentions, too, that in a place like Krakoa, what is bothering him is that enemies are now friends. We see Jean Grey having what appears to be a cordial conversation with Magneto. And, of course, people who have tried to kill them many, many times, like Apocalypse, are also now part of this utopian society on Krakoa. And Wolverine is just having a hard time believing it, I think. So, nevertheless, a gate opens, a Krakoan gate opens, and through it comes Omega Red. And he's saying, I hear you're offering amnesty. Now, Wolverine does not like this guy, gives him to the count of 3 to get out. Doesn't happen, of course. They go at it. They have a battle. Magneto, of course, can control metal. Wolverine has a substantial amount of adamantium inside of him, and so he prevents him from causing any more damage to Omega Red. He says to him that, everybody's welcome here, even Omega Red, and that we need to basically let him be there. So, Wolverine needs to go and sort of find out what is happening. So he jumps back, or I guess Magneto grabs a hold of his metal and forces him back through the portal, which takes him to Paris. Once he's in Paris, he hears sirens, he smells blood, he finds a bin full of dead bodies. One of them's not quite dead. This guy jumps up and says, "You're like him." Wolverine responds, "He's nothing like him." The person dies. And he makes I really like the comment that he makes. He says, "I got a million reasons to hate Omega Red, but there's one thing that stings worse than the rest. He reminds me of my worst self." Thought that was a very cool little bit to add in there. So over here, Wolverine has come back. He's come back with the info. He's kind of letting Magneto know that there's bad stuff going on in Paris. He thinks that Omega Red has killed hundreds of people and that they shouldn't be holding this psycho, giving him refuge on the island. They argue a little bit. Magneto basically tells Wolverine that it's his job as the head of the X-Force, or part of the X-Force, that he's basically Krakoa's CIA, and it's his job to find out what's going on. He goes down to wherever they're holding Omega Red, trying to figure out what exactly he was doing, what happened. He doesn't really reveal much, just sort of says that he's a little bit weak and isn't gonna help him, but if he wants to know what's going on, he should go to King's Oubliette, which is, I believe, an area in Paris. So, goes back to Paris, is offered flowers by a woman. He says, sorry, but no, and this is really what she's actually trying to test him. We don't really know that yet. She wants to go for a drink. He says, let's go to this close place. She says, no, there's a place I'd rather take you to. It's a little further away. He says he doesn't really have that kind of, or she says that she wants to go to this other place. He wants to stay there. She says there isn't any other time. It has to be now. So Wolverine comes into this bar. I mean, you can tell right away there's something off about this place. I kind of figured out exactly what it was immediately. I don't know if they're really trying to hide it. But so they're serving him absinthe. Wolverine's drinking. All of a sudden he realizes everybody around him is staring at him, and that the stench that is in the place is actually death, that these people are vampires. So they string up Wolverine, and I guess what they want to do is they want to tap him so that they can drink his blood. Now, I'm thinking here that perhaps what they're trying to do is if they're already vampires, maybe they're trying to become vampire mutants, increase their power. I'm not exactly sure. Whatever the case may be, this guy seems to be the leader of the throng at this point, and he goes to try to tap Wolverine, gets some blood in a glass, and then Wolverine, slices his head off and starts killing the dead. Then this mysterious lady comes back, and she has a UV gun, and she starts clearing the room for Wolverine. He's, of course, helping, and she makes the comment, just a stranger who wanted to sell you a flower when he wants to know who she is. So she is obviously some sort of vampire killer. We find out that she's part of an order that protects against vampires. Now, this is sort of split between Krakoa and in the morgue in Paris. Omega Red is telling Wolverine here that he was trying to show him the truth. In the Paris morgue, the guy is looking over the bodies, nothing happening there. He wants to know how he can be condemned for murder if the people he killed were already dead. So, that I find very interesting. Then, of course, in the morgue, things start to not go so well as the undead dead start to become alive again. Wolverine comments here, "Don't you put that on me," when referring to the change in Omega Red. He said, "You were a killer long before you got lab enhanced. Spilling blood as is as natural to you as breathing." So Omega Red sort of replies, "Did you know that he's been feeding off of animals lately just to sustain himself? He's hoping that the Krakoan flowers will be able to heal him because he's heard that Krakoa is a place that gives." You can see here, they've come back to life. The mortician has now been eaten. More conversation here between Omega Red and Wolverine. In a blind rage, he took a sword and stabbed them both, death fulfilling the stag's prophecy. It's a story of a dark inevitability. So what he's referring to is he was talking about the story of St. Julian, where it was about this guy who left his home. Some people came back and they came to his home and they were sick. His wife put them in the bed together. This guy came home and put a sword through both of them, yet still managed to become a saint. So I think that's sort of what Omega Red is saying there, is that I've done some bad stuff, but hey, you never know. I could still end up being a saint, however unlikely that is. Now, basically, this is where Wolverine finds out that her name is Louise and that she's part of a guard that's been fighting vampires for years, but that they're growing stronger. They're trying to grow their numbers. They're trying to get everything, trying to get their power as high as they can, and she sort of thinks that it might be because all of the X-Men are migrating to Krakoa. It may be causing a power vacuum that could be filled by the vampires. So they go down into the catacombs because they want to kill the vampires. Louise has a good ally now. She's got her UV gun and she's got Wolverine. So they go down there. Of course, her gun stops working, but she has a holy water bomb, which seems to work just as well. Wolverine kills some people. It's what he's good at. Then this is interesting here. She says, Louise has been caught, and she says, "Logan, s'il vous plaît." Logan, please. And this guy responds, "I believe she wants you to stop, monsieur." And, well, let her go as long as you give us... He says, "We'll let her go as long as you give us what you want." and Wolverine wants to know what it is what they want, and of course it's his blood that they want. Wolverine is not exactly pleased with that whole situation. They do sort of, he does kill that guy, but he does sort of come to find that there is other stuff going on. That they're growing in numbers, these vampires. They're getting stronger, and it appears that they may be trying to use mutant blood to enhance themselves even further. They get down into the furthest part of the crypt, and Sub-Voice says to Wolverine, he says, the mutant nation might seem invincible, but the vampire nation is growing stronger. You have Charles Xavier. They have... Oh, sorry, this is actually... Omega Red is saying it to him. They have Vlad, Dracula. So, Dracula has entered the building, ladies and gentlemen. And then at the end here, we're just sort of looking at what appears to be Dracula, who may have drank in some blood of Wolverine that causes him to heal really quick, which might allow him to be out in the sun. He's talking to Omega Red, saying he wants him to join them, but you obey me, and that's where the story ends. They talk a little bit about blood work, mutant blood work, Wolverine blood work. It's not that important, I don't think. And then do they give us a preview? No preview of the next issue. Now, one thing I wanted to mention here is we don't really know when this has taken place. It just says somewhere in Alaska. We know they're in Alaska, and we know that Wolverine has killed all of his buddies. Now, and he says they're dead at his hands. Now, what I'm wondering, based on, at the end that they have introduced Dracula, is if there is going to be some sort of confrontation between Dracula and Wolverine, where Wolverine ends up becoming somewhat of a vampire himself, because one of the things they did actually mention in this part here is that Wolverine's blood type isn't altogether different from that of the vampire. So maybe, possibly, Wolverine is a vampire. Maybe that's why he killed all of them. As I smack the camera, I'm really not sure. Nobody's sure. I'm very interested to find out. But one of the things that I think I really liked about this book the most is that you get some more of those subversive undertones that the X-Men are up to no good. Wolverine sees it. He thinks that there's problems. He can see that everything is not how it's supposed to be. But inevitably, we see he ends up in turmoil. But hey, that's Wolverine. That's his story. That's his life. That's his legacy. He has done terrible things. And that's my review for the Wolverine #1. It was very, very good. I just wanted to show one last thing before we go. Now, I am not a variant guy, and if you've watched any of the videos so far, you've heard me say that when I've showed variants. I like Batman variants. I buy Batman variants. I got a Guardians of the Galaxy 1 variant because there was no regular ones left when I got to the store. But this is Alex Ross. If you've watched the channel at all, you've probably heard me refer to Alex Ross and how much I love his art. I can't get over how beautiful this cover is, how beautiful the shot is with Wolverine standing in the water there with the foliage around him, claws crossed. Kudos, Alex Ross. You just keep getting it done. At any rate, This has been another Ye Olde Comic Con Modern review with the Son of the Morning. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you when we do the next video.